Hello, I'm Chris Williams from Read Comics, They're Bad For You, the name of my YouTube channel. Or if you're watching this on BitChute, the name of my BitChute channel is Comic Freak. We're going to be looking at how Aileen Wuornos became a cult hero to a bunch of SJW weirdos. And what I've read in this article, it just paints social justice warriors as even worse than one could think they are. Now, this was a Vice article, and this is only going to be parts of it because the article was rather long. If you want to read the full article, go to Vice and look up Aileen Wuornos. Let's dig into this article. Shortly before Cardi B released her single Press back in May, she revealed the track's controversial cover art, a recreation of an infamous photo of Aileen Wuornos in a prison jumpsuit, handcuffs raised around her neck. Wuornos was a sex worker who fell in love with a woman and spent a decade on death row after a jury found her guilty of 7 charges of first-degree murder, though she maintained that she committed these crimes in self-defense. The lurid story of sex-working man-killer stirred an unrelenting media frenzy following her death by lethal injection in 2002. The press dubbed Wuornos the first female serial killer. See, we already have problems. One of the reasons why this woman became so famous was because she was a sex worker, and she ended up killing a bunch of men. Now she's been co-opted after her death by SJWs and their politics over someone who was most likely lying about killing these men in self-defense. Now, Aileen was abused in her life, but I don't want to put it out that she was an innocent person. Most likely she was a murderous killer. And don't forget about that as we go further into this article. While some critics dismissed Cardi B's tribute to Wuornos as tasteless in certain corners of the internet, the response was celebratory. Yes, props to Aileen Wuornos, one fan tweeted, referencing a previous Cardi B tweet. Another responded sources has it saying that Cardi B's character from Press is inspired by a notorious serial killer named Aileen Wuornos. I say that's a genius as F. Activists like Danny Love, an outspoken advocate for black women's liberation, sex workers' rights, known online as Black Safaric, saw the image as a powerful symbol of solidarity and survival in the face of male violence. This is so political, she tweeted. I actually strongly support this. I respect it. I'm actually mind blown by this. This is so political? What kind of language is that? Couldn't you think of anything more SJW than say this is so political? In the decades since Wuornos' death, some people have argued that her story deserves a more compassionate, nuanced examination. Born to a working-class family in Michigan, Wuornos endured a childhood marked by horrific violence, poverty, and sexual abuse. Trained to sex work for survival, Wuornos hitchhiked down to Florida highways where, as she later argued in court, she survived rape and violent assault. Over the course of her arrest, trial, and incarceration, she claimed men she killed had attempted to sexually assault her and that she shot them in self-defense. Now, yes, as we see, she was abused in her life, but this doesn't excuse her murdering people. And apparently the court agrees with me in that she did murder these people. And I need to stress to you all to have a level mind and look at the facts. She murdered these men, and everyone seems to be coming out on her side. So we need to look at the evidence. If you look into this story, after I'm done reading this article to you, you can learn the actual facts about this case. Though her testimony was contradictory at times and she ended up pleading no contest to 5 of the murder charges, her supporters, many of them familiar with the violence sex workers face on the job, still take Wuornos on her word. This woman was a lesbian sex worker who killed a client who she thought her life was threatened by. Love told Vice for Love. Cardi's callback to Wuornos sent a powerful message, especially in light of the rapper's own experiences working as a stripper as a young woman, often facing threats to her own safety from dangerous clients. Aileen is badass and so is Cardi, Love said. Oh God, listen, you're admiring a criminal, one of which is a murderer, while Cardi B is basically your opportunistic celebrity you're celebrating, Miss Love. Now, I could be wrong, but Cardi B only really cares if you buy her album or not. Continuing on with the article, this part of it gets rather SJW. While this may have been the first time a high-profile musician invoked Wuornos' image as a symbol of defiance, sex workers, lesbians, feminists, sexual assault survivors, and those whose identities intersect these experiences have been quietly looking to Wuornos as a cult hero and feminist icon. Today marks the 10th anniversary of the death of Aileen Wuornos, a beautifully humane woman who will forever hold a place in my heart for her strength and courage in living through the horrific life cards she'd been dealt with, and that they were completely out of her control, read a post on the now-defunct blog Feminist Rag in 2013, later reposted on a men's rights forum. Why reposted on a men's rights forum? Because they'd like to show how their enemies would celebrate in their own deaths. Yeah, these women would celebrate the deaths of men. You can see it here with them worshipping a freaking serial killer. God, she killed these men, and no one seems to talk about the deaths of these men. Did they even matter? No, it seems like to these people, they don't. I've always been kind of obsessed with Aileen Wuornos because one of my aunts was a truck stop hooker too. Actor and drag performer William Belly told Billboard in 2018, shortly after releasing a Wuornos-inspired musical parody video, "I've done all the things that she's done except kill people. I've hookered. I've bleached my hair. I've worked down a 195 and done all of it." Well, why don't you go back to it then? I can't really respect anyone who would just, cheapen the deaths of these men and while championing a murderer. Now, in the past, I've thought serial killers were cool, but I've had a change of heart over the recent years, and I find myself not willing to, celebrate such murderous behavior from people anymore. Eric Lee runs the online clothing shop Corner Strong, where he sells original designs, including a t-shirt juxtaposing that iconic image of Wuornos in handcuffs with Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign slogan, "I'm with her." Lee created the image in 2016 following the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia. At the time, he was working 2 blocks away from the convention center, and he remembers the constant pro-Clinton buzz. "I was fed up with the phony agendas of neoliberal politics," Lee said. "Career politicians that pretend to give a S about poor people while supporting legislation that kills them. I wanted to say something about it and happened to be reading a lot about Aileen Wuornos at the time. She was the definition of disenfranchised." This person sounds sensible, huh? Well, we're going to read more into this guy's tweets, and you'll find out a little bit more. 3 years later, Lee says "I'm with her" shirt is still one of his most popular designs. Her story speaks to the experience of sex workers in this country who are constantly in danger from clients, societal stigma, and the punitive state, he said of Wuornos. Bernie Sanders voted for FOSTA-SESTA, which has made sex work for her less safe. The shirt has stimulated more dialogue about all of these intersecting issues than I could foresee. Well, that was unexpected. Another nail in the Bernie Sanders campaign. What with this guy bringing up the fact that his programs are actually killing people. But he brings up the fact that sex workers are in constant danger and face societal stigma. As I understand it, sex workers are basically only doing this for money. They're not forced to become sex workers. They're doing it of their own free accord. And they, of course, face societal stigma because what they're doing is still frowned on by society. And I have to say that's a good thing. It should not be a good thing that women sell their bodies and dignity for money. But let's get around to finishing this article off. Of course, some survivors will understandably stop short of celebrating Wuornos' descent into actual violence leading up to her sentencing. Wuornos' defense team argued that Wuornos' traumatic childhood and adolescence had produced serious consequences for her psychological health. Expert witnesses for the defense claimed that Wuornos exhibited symptoms of consistent with antisocial personality disorder and borderline personality disorder, complicating the prosecution's portrayal of her as a rational actor. Ultimately, these psychological considerations failed to sway the jury against recommending the death penalty. Good. She deserved the death penalty. And just because she got a miserable life does not mean that she should be exempt from the consequences of her actions, as others have said and constantly said over the years, but in this case I actually agree with. I hope that doesn't sound trite, but this is just the feelings this person and this article stir up in me. Oppressed people as villains when they react in unhinged ways that are often violent, but it's important to look at how capitalism, cis, heterosexist, patriarchy, and misogyny really put her in many of the positions she was in, and that made her murder. Love said she was a victim of so many structural oppressions. Sex workers in her field lack protection, which allows violence to happen. Sex workers cannot go to the police for help because they are directly connected to the oppression of so many marginalized groups who often are sex workers. Women, blacks, and other people of color, LGBT people. That was a mouthful. Love really wanted to put every SJW synonym in there, didn't she? As reports of powerful men who abuse vulnerable women continue to surface, it's hard to deny that survivors are craving stories of revenge, stories where victims not only live to survive the abuse but fight back. I think part of her appeal to me personally in this cultural moment is that Aileen Wuornos was a woman that men feared, said Bailey, at a time when we are constantly inundated with stories like that of Jeffrey Epstein and Brett Kavanaugh. Her story is an example of men facing repercussions for their actions. A prostitute hunting men instead of being hunted is a deeply comforting story. Let's examine this. This Love woman, she says society oppresses people and causes them to become prostitutes. No. Prostitutes choose to become prostitutes because it makes them money. Yes, they face danger, but they're doing something generally frowned on. Now, she wants this to lead to something where it will change society, but she brought up the fact that Bernie Sanders, who does champion such things, his ways don't work. So what is she saying? She really has no real point to this. She's just talking about these things that happen in society, but she has no real way to fix them. And she expects others to come up with some way. How very nice. No one can figure that out, Lee. All we can do is try and work and make the world a better place. While people like you say the world just oppresses us and that we should rise up and do something about it. Well, what are we going to do about it, even if we do rise up and do anything? What is the way to fix these things? There are no easy answers to these questions, but people like Miss Love and the writer of this article, they most assuredly don't. Now, if you like this video, subscribe. Make sure you're still subscribed because YouTube is going around unsubscribing people, so make sure you're subscribed. If you're watching my videos but you're not subscribed, please subscribe to me. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, read comics, they're bad for you. Then go over to BitChute and subscribe to my BitChute channel, Comic Freak. Hit that bell for notification, hit that like button, and leave some comments down below. And could you please share this video, share it on Twitter and share it on Facebook, share it anywhere you think it would get the most views. Because YouTube is also not going around promoting their creators' videos anymore, and it would really help me if you could please share this video. It's time for me to plug for my independent comic book again, so keep your ears peeled. Keep checking back in future videos for more information on my own upcoming independent comic book, Scumdogs. I'm Chris Williams, and I'll be back again tomorrow with another video or review.